Hey guys, tonight we journey into a world you think you know, but trust me, you don't. The castles, the knights, the courtly dances under torchlight. Those are the fairy tales. The reality, far less chivalry, far more chamber pots. Tonight, we're diving deep into the sticky, stinky, downright stomach-turning underside of medieval life. The customs, habits, and traditions that will make you rethink romanticizing the Middle Ages ever again. But before we venture further, if you enjoy these strange little journeys into history's darker corners, take a second to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment letting me know what time it is where you're watching from. It's always fascinating to see who's tuning in and when. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum, and let's slip together into tonight's story. Tonight's journey, the most disgusting customs of the Middle Ages. And fair warning, this won't be gentle. Medieval Europe was a place where hygiene was a theory, bathing was suspicious, and your dinner might be shared with your livestock, or your lice. The people of the time weren't filthy by choice. Well, not always. Sometimes the church told them it was sinful to wash too often. Other times, they just didn't see the point. But the real horror isn't just in the dirt. It's in the details. Like the use of dried moss straw, or even handfuls of snow as toilet paper. The idea that clean meant having less visible grime. The way people casually tossed waste into the street and shouted warnings like "Garde-à-lou" as an afterthought. And yes, that habit occasionally killed someone. Falling waste wasn't just metaphorical back then. But don't worry. We're going to take this slow, one revolting custom at a time, because there's something strangely soothing about knowing we've come a long, long way. And as your eyes grow heavier, you'll find yourself oddly comforted by the sound of medieval misery. We're not here to mock the past, well, maybe a little. But more importantly, we're here to walk through it barefoot, if necessary, over the straw-strewn floors of smoky taverns, through plague-soaked alleyways, and into the intimate, bizarre traditions that defined the filthiest centuries in European history. Because tonight, you won't be watching history. You'll be living it. And now let's begin. Do you want me to continue with the next part? You wake up, but it doesn't feel like waking. It feels like surfacing from a fever. The air is thick, damp, sour. You open your eyes slowly, unsure what century your nose has landed in before the rest of you has even caught up. There's a roof above your head, sort of. Wooden beams stained black from decades of smoke and soot sag ominously overhead. The walls around you are wattle and daub, dried mud straw, and animal dung packed into a wood frame. It's the color of old porridge, and it smells like a barn that forgot it was a barn and tried to become a bathroom instead. There is no bed. Not really. Just a flattened pile of hay and discarded rushes on the packed dirt floor, all stuffed into a crude wooden frame that creaks if you so much as exhale. You lie on your side, half tangled in a wool blanket, so itchy it might actually be sentient. Underneath the blanket is a tunic, your only one, which you haven't taken off in weeks. No sheets, no pillows. Just your elbow under your head, and a faint suspicion that something else is also sleeping in the hay with you. The smell is the first thing you really register. Stale sweat, mildew, wet wool, maybe mold, maybe worse. You hope it's just the rushes and not some dead rat tucked beneath them. It's hard to tell. You breathe through your mouth, which is worse. Now you can taste it. The room is small, too small. One room for everything. Cooking, sleeping, praying, arguing. You shift slightly and bump into a warm body, your brother, or your cousin, or someone else who got married to the corner last night. Your mother is on the other side of the room, snoring softly. A chicken clucks and flaps once in the rafters. Yes, the family shares space with livestock. They help heat the room. You try not to think about what else they contribute. Your feet ache already. They're cold, pressed against a corner of the wall where the wind seeps through a crack. You wonder briefly if they're still attached. A rooster crows outside early and loud, and the baby, someone's baby, starts crying. It's still dark, barely dawn. The fire in the hearth has gone out. It was the only heat source, and now it's just a black smear of ash and hope. The last ember died sometime after midnight, buried in a mound of ash to keep it warm. You were supposed to bank it. Maybe you forgot. Maybe you didn't care. Either way, the cold has come back in. You sit up, bones creaking like the floor beneath you. Your back hurts. Your knees ache. You're 23 and you feel 90. There's no chamber pot. Someone used a corner bucket and forgot to empty it. The smell is intense. The walls drip with condensation. No insulation, just planks and prayers. A spider crawls across your tunic. You brush it away with the practiced indifference of someone who's done this every morning for years. You don't scream. There's no energy for that. Just another roommate with more legs. Your mouth is dry. Last night's meal, barley porridge and watered-down ale left your throat sticky. There's no glass of water on a bedside table. There's no table. You'll have to drink from the rain barrel or pray the stream hasn't frozen over. You look around. No mirrors, of course. Your reflection exists only in muddy puddles or bits of polished metal. You know what you look like: hollow eyes, cracked lips, hair that mats into shapes. You haven't bathed in weeks. No one has. You hear the neighbor through the wall. Thin as paper, the wall lets everything through. He's coughing again, loud and wet. You count the coughs, wonder how many days he has left. The plague is gone for now, but something always fills the gap. Typhus, maybe, or the bloody flux. You hope it's not catching. It probably is. There's movement outside. Hooves, footsteps, shouting. The street is already alive with the business of survival. Someone yells about firewood. Another curses at their cow. Somewhere a priest is chanting. You sigh. Another day begins. You don't get to lie in. Rest is a luxury. Comfort a myth. Disgust a constant companion. You swing your legs over the side of the bed, or what passes for one, and step down into something wet. Is it water? Is it worse? Doesn't matter. This is the Middle Ages, and you are awake. Your stomach grumbles before your legs are ready to carry you. But you already know there's not much waiting. Breakfast isn't a meal here. It's a gesture. A reminder that survival requires effort, but enjoyment. That's optional. You cross the single room of your home, brushing past sleeping siblings and the pungent remains of last night's stew. The pot still sits by the hearth, crusted and cold. A rat darts out from beneath it, as if defending its new property rights. You don't even flinch. Your hands reach for the loaf on the shelf, a generous name for what's really a stone masquerading as bread. Coarse, cracked, and flecked with bits of husk. Maybe rye, maybe barley, maybe sawdust. You can't be sure. The village baker is known to stretch his flour with whatever won't immediately cause a riot. You bite into it, and chew, slowly. Not because you want to savor it, but because your teeth aren't what they used to be. And you're 23. The bread is hard enough to qualify as a weapon. A splinter of crust stabs your gum. You taste blood. You keep chewing. If there's anything to drink, it's ale. Not the rich, frothy kind. Just barely alcoholic barley water, cloudy and slightly sour. It's not indulgent, it's necessary. Water carries disease. Boiling it takes wood you don't have. Ale is safer, so you drink and ignore the floating things. If you're lucky, you might smear some fat on your bread. Leftover tallow or goose grease from a meal 2 weeks ago. It's gone slightly rancid, but everything is slightly rancid. You tell yourself it's flavor. Hygiene comes next in theory. But here in the 14th century, clean is a relative term. You splash your face with water from a cracked jug. It's freezing muddy and probably shared with the chickens. You pat your skin dry with the sleeve of your tunic, gritty, unwashed wool, scratchy as regret. There's no soap. Not unless someone in the village rendered some from animal fat and lye, and if they did, it's locked away like treasure. So you do what everyone does, scrub with cold water, maybe rub your hands with sand or ash to feel like you tried. It doesn't work, but it feels traditional. Your breath, a biological weapon. There's no toothbrush, no toothpaste. Some chew on twigs. Others rinse with vinegar if they're fancy. Most just hope for the best. You run a finger across your teeth and feel a layer that wasn't there last summer. Or maybe it was. You pick something from your nose and flick it into the fireless hearth. There's no shame in it. Modesty is reserved for the rich. If you feel particularly brave, you might clean your ears with a carved stick. It's painful and never truly effective, but it's better than hearing the slosh of your own earwax during Mass. Maybe. Clothes are another matter. You're still wearing what you slept in. You will continue wearing it today, possibly tomorrow, possibly until it disintegrates or someone physically rips it off your decaying body. Washing clothes requires water, firewood, soap, and time. You have none of those. Your tunic is brownish not because it started that way, but because life turned it that way. The sleeves are stiff from sweat and rain. Your undergarments, if you own any, haven't been white since childhood. They smell like fermented regret. Your feet, toughened by years of barefoot labor, are cracked and dry. You rinse them occasionally in the stream, which is also where the animals drink and where people dump their chamber pots. It's all one system, one ecosystem of filth. And speaking of filth, the latrine. If you're lucky, there's a communal outhouse behind the house, a hole in the ground with a few boards across the top. No walls, no roof, no privacy. Just cold wind, open sky, and a sense of mutual suffering with anyone else unfortunate enough to need it at the same time. If not, you squat over a ditch or behind the hedgerow. You bring your own wiping solution, a bit of straw, a handful of moss, maybe a rag you found last year. If you have none of those, you improvise. Or you don't wipe. That's also an option. Then you rise, stretch your aching limbs, and get ready for the real work to begin. You scratch your scalp and a few things dislodge. You ignore it. Lice are a part of life. Everyone has them. So do the fleas which live in your bedding and your seams. If you're wealthy, you might have a servant whose job is to pick them off. If you're poor, you just get used to the bites. There are no perfumes, no deodorants, only natural musk aged in wool dust and despair. And just like that, your morning routine is done. No shower, no shave, no makeup, no floss. Just bread ale, a splash of water, and an unwavering tolerance for filth. You step outside into the mud, the smoke, the stench, and the scraping cold. You are ready, sort of. Let's start with your clothes. Or more precisely, the one set of clothing you own. Because you don't have a wardrobe. You don't have options. You have the tunic. It's made of wool. Thick, coarse, homespun. Scratchy in summer, barely tolerable in winter. It's stiff from sweat smoke and time. Once upon a time, it may have had a color dull blue, maybe. But now it's the uniform shade of medieval existence dirt. The hem is frayed. The collar is stretched. The sleeves are uneven because you mended them yourself using thread made from unraveled undergarments. You've patched holes with other holes, turned tears into vents, and stitched everything with a prayer and a bone needle that doubles as a hairpin. Underneath, if you're lucky, is a linen shift. If you're really lucky, it's not crawling. The shift absorbs the sweat, the grime, the bits of the day that your skin can no longer contain. You wear it until it falls apart or becomes indistinguishable from the wool above it. Then maybe you get another. Shoes, leather if you've got the coin. A single piece folded and tied with string thin as parchment and about as waterproof. Most days you go barefoot, through mud, manure, snow, and firewood splinters. Your soles are hard as bark. Your toes have forgotten what comfort feels like. Now take a deep breath, because we're about to talk about your home. You step inside, or maybe you never left. Either way, it's time to look around. Your house is made of what the earth gave you and what the cow left behind. Wattle and daub thin wooden slats packed with a cheerful mix of straw, mud, and dung. It's not just insulation, it's identity. You live inside a structure that is 30% optimism, 70% excrement. The roof is thatched, which sounds lovely until it leaks, which it always does. Water finds its way in no matter how well you packed the straw. When it rains, the interior becomes a theater of drips. When it storms, it becomes a pond. And when it's dry, the roof rustles because birds and rodents have made it home too. You might have a second story, a loft really reached by a ladder that you built from old branches and guilt. It's where the kids sleep, or the animals, or both. There are no windows, not really. Just holes with wooden shutters that close tightly enough to keep out most of the wind, but none of the cold, or the noise, or the smell. The floor earth. Hard-packed dirt smoothed by centuries of barefoot traffic, and the occasional broom made from a tree branch and misplaced hope. In wet months, it becomes a swamp. In winter, it turns to stone. And if you spill something, you just push it deeper into the soil and call it cleaning. If you're fancy, you've got a central hearth. No chimney, just a hole in the ceiling where the smoke sometimes escapes. Most of the time, it just lingers, curling around the beams, coating every surface with soot, aging you a decade for every year you breathe it in. Your lungs are seasoned. The walls sweat in the summer and freeze in the winter. There's no insulation, no glass, no barrier between you and the elements beyond sheer willpower. Your furniture is minimal. A bench, a table, a stool if you're feeling regal. Everything is handmade, uneven, and splintery. The bed is communal. One big wooden frame shared by parents, children, grandparents, and probably a cat that no one remembers adopting. Storage, a wooden chest. It holds your treasures, a spare tunic, a wooden spoon, a dried turnip, and maybe, just maybe, a bit of cloth that once belonged to someone who mattered. The ceiling is low. You hit your head more often than you admit, especially when it's dark, which is always. Light comes from the fire or from rushlights, strips of reeds soaked in animal fat that burn just long enough to remind you how dark it really is. Privacy, don't even think about it. The walls hear everything. So does the family. You live, breathe, eat, sleep, and suffer together. Every argument is public. Every cough is communal. Every bodily function is a group event. And pests. Oh, they live here too. Lice, fleas, rats, mites. They thrive in the straw bedding. They dance in your hair. They curl up in the corners and nibble on whatever scraps you forgot to hide. You sleep with them. You eat with them. You never escape them. When it rains hard, water seeps up through the floor. When it snows, frost climbs down the walls. When it's hot, the air inside turns into a soup of sweat and smoke. You spend your life alternating between freezing and boiling. There is no in-between. Yet despite all of this, this is home. It's not beautiful, it's not clean, but it is yours. And you keep it together with a broom, a knife, and a level of patience that borders on sainthood. Because in the Middle Ages, comfort is a concept for the wealthy. For everyone else, shelter is just a defense against the worst of the world. And your clothing, it's your armor, fraying, itchy, stained, but still holding just barely. You step outside and the world greets you not with sunlight, but with mud. Always mud. Deep, slick, ankle-stealing mud that grabs at your feet and doesn't let go. It's the color of despair and smells like the communal latrine had an argument with a pigsty. It squelches with every step, sucking at your shoes, if you're lucky enough to have them, or swallowing your bare feet whole. Welcome to the workday. You don't go to an office. You don't clock in. You just begin. Because in the Middle Ages, you don't work to live, you work to not die. Your job, everything. You're a farmer, a laborer, a carpenter, a thatcher, a ditch digger, a pest remover. And if something breaks, congratulations. You're now also a blacksmith. If you're tied to the land which you are, unless you're a wandering monk or a thief, your day revolves around whatever the weather hasn't ruined yet. You might be hoeing fields so dry they crack like old skin, or planting in soil so wet your knees disappear. You might be collecting manure for fertilizer, which means hauling baskets of steaming gifts left by cows, horses, pigs, and the occasional overambitious goose. The tools you use are handmade, splintered, and dangerously close to being more hazard than help. A wooden plow, a rusted sickle, a shovel with a cracked shaft. Nothing fits your hands. Everything fits your blisters. If you're a woman, you don't escape this. You're in the fields too, right beside the men, while also raising children, baking bread, weaving cloth, fetching water, feeding animals, cleaning filth, and trying not to give birth in a ditch. Multitasking isn't a skill, it's a condition. If you're a child, you're not playing. You're working. Herding animals, scaring crows, gathering kindling, grinding grain, or weaving baskets. Childhood is a brief illusion, broken the moment you can lift a bucket without falling into it. Maybe you're not a farmer. Maybe you're lucky enough to have a trade. You're a tanner, great. You get to work with urine-soaked hides and the pungent perfume of rotting flesh all day. Or a butcher surrounded by blood flies and the occasional accusation of witchcraft if someone's stew goes wrong. You could be a miller assuming the local river hasn't flooded or frozen, or a baker waking before dawn to feed the village with bread that could chip a tooth. Or perhaps you're a thatcher spending your days on slanted roofs, cursing gravity and birds in equal measure. If you're strong and unfortunate, maybe you haul stones for the Lord's new manor. Back-breaking work, sun up to sundown, no gloves, no safety. Just ropes, sweat, and the constant gamble of not getting crushed when the cartwheel gives out. You break for food, barely. Maybe a hunk of bread, a bit of pottage, a sludge of grains, and whatever root vegetable didn't rot in storage. You eat standing up quickly because the work waits. It always waits. If you get hurt, too bad. There's no sick leave. You limp, you bandage it with moss and hope, or you hide the injury until someone notices the smell of infection. If you can't work, you don't eat. If you don't eat, you die. So you work. The overseer, if you have one, carries a stick and a sour disposition. His job is to remind you that no matter how hard you work, it's never enough. If you miss your quota, you get fined, punished, or humiliated in front of the others. Sometimes all three. You're not working for yourself. The land belongs to the Lord. The tools were borrowed. The seed was taxed. The harvest will be divided, with most of it going to someone who's never dirtied their hands a day in their life. You pray your portion will be enough to last the winter. It won't be. And when the bell rings or the sun finally begins to set, you don't relax. You go home to start a different kind of work. Mending clothes, tending animals, preparing food, fixing the fence, cleaning up after people and pigs, tending to a fever, a wound, a toothache, or a sibling who got into the nettles again. And through all of this, there's no relief, no bath to sink into, no meal to look forward to. Just aching muscles, gnawing hunger, and the growing knowledge that tomorrow is coming again. The Middle Ages aren't romantic. They're relentless. And every day is a battle between your will to survive and the mud trying to swallow you whole. But still, you rise. You labor. You endure. Because that's what people did. Day after day. Century after century, and the filth that was just part of the uniform. You've survived the morning labor, your back aching, and your hands coated in grime that doesn't wash off with water, only time. Now it's time to tend to something even heavier than your chores, your soul. Because in the Middle Ages, belief isn't just something you hold in your heart. It's something that holds you by the throat, by the wallet, and by the minute. You do not go a single day without confronting the divine or fearing the devil. God is everywhere. So is judgment. And superstition fills the gaps like mold between the stones. You begin the day with a prayer, not because you're devout by modern standards, but because you're terrified of what happens if you forget. Failing to pray might invite demons, or plague, or both. And maybe the crops will die, and maybe the cow will stop producing milk, and maybe that cough in your chest turns out to be the wrath of Saint Apollonia. You don't know who all the saints are. No one does. But there are hundreds, and each one guards a piece of your body or a corner of your misfortune. You know which ones to call upon for fevers, toothaches, childbirth, lost chickens, and broken cartwheels. Your spiritual toolkit is massive, and your understanding of it is muddled. But that's fine. You don't need logic. You need luck. The church bell rings. You cross yourself, automatically pausing your work. You look up. Everyone else has stopped too. It's the Angelus. Time for 3 Hail Marys. Doesn't matter what you're doing, harvesting grain or burying a cousin, it's prayer time. Religion is not gentle here. It's not a warm sermon and cookies afterward. It's a constant looming fear of damnation. Hell is real, and you are going there unless you behave, and even then maybe. Because behavior doesn't save you. The church does. The local priest. He's your connection to salvation, and the only man in the village who can read. He says Mass in Latin. You don't understand a word of it, but you nod at the right times and chew the dry communion wafer like it might turn into something holy if you don't choke first. Confession is routine. You enter a dark booth, kneel and whisper every sin you can remember. Thought and impure thought. That's a sin. Laughed during prayers, sin. Didn't pay your tithes on time, big sin. You leave with a penance 5 prayers, or a walk barefoot to the shrine of some obscure martyr, with a name like Saint Euphrasyus, the mildly decapitated. Religion governs your diet too. Meat only on certain days. Fasting often. Feasting when allowed. Lent and Advent aren't seasons, they're spiritual obstacle courses. Your stomach is a calendar of sins, and your kitchen is a monastery with less enthusiasm. You believe in miracles, you believe in relics. A splinter of the true cross might be in the next village over, or someone's claiming it is. People are making pilgrimages to see a severed toe allegedly belonging to St. Bartholomew. It's in a glass box. It smells like cheese. You don't question it. You also believe in curses. Say the wrong thing, and the evil eye might fall upon you. Step on the threshold with your left foot, bad luck. Spill salt, throw it over your shoulder. A black cat crosses your path. That's not just superstition. That's serious. You hang herbs above your door to keep out spirits. You nail iron to the beams to ward off witches. You whisper the Lord's Prayer while milking the cow just in case demons like dairy. You wear an amulet around your neck, carved bone or a saint's image. Not blessed, but it might help. Maybe. The church controls more than your rituals. It controls your fears. The bubonic plague, a punishment for sin. Stillbirth, God's will. Drought. Your neighbor probably skipped Mass. Everything is cause and effect. Everything is divine math. And you are always the variable being punished. Heaven sounds nice, but it's distant. Purgatory is more real. A smoky waiting room of endless suffering. You imagine it often. You picture your soul stuck there for decades because you didn't confess that time you stole a radish. You give coins to the priest to say prayers for the dead. You can't read, but you believe in the power of words whispered in Latin over a rotting grave. Witches are real. The devil walks the earth. Ghosts haunt the edges of the village. Demons live in trees. Fairies steal babies and replace them with changelings. You've heard the stories. Everyone has. You don't question them. You plan around them. And above it all, the church thrives. Collecting tithes, holding records, owning land. More powerful than the king in many places. It tells you when to work, when to rest, when to fear, and how to beg for mercy. Your soul is theirs to protect, and if necessary, punish. You believe. Because what other choice do you have? And in the rare moments of joy in festivals and births, In rare good harvests, you still give thanks to God, even if He doesn't seem to be listening, because maybe, just maybe, tomorrow He will. Your stomach growls again, louder this time. Morning was a crust of bread and a prayer. Now you're hoping for something heartier. You dream of meat. You think of stew. You'd even settle for a second ladle of pottage if someone's feeling generous. But this is the Middle Ages. Hunger is your roommate. Dinner, your main meal, depends entirely on the season, the harvest, and your place in society. For peasants like you, it's often a single pot of food simmering over a smoky fire, thick with whatever's available: grains, onions, garlic, maybe a turnip or two. If you're truly lucky, a sliver of salted pork or a bone to gnaw. The pot itself is a permanent fixture, rarely emptied, just refilled. The bottom crusts black with char. The top forms a skin. It's less of a recipe and more of an ongoing edible experiment. This is pottage. It's your breakfast, your dinner, your life. And it never quite tastes the same twice. Sometimes it's too thin. Sometimes it's gelatinous. Once in a while, a rat falls in. That's protein, someone says. You keep eating. Spoiled food isn't rare. No refrigeration. Meat spoils fast unless it's dried, smoked, or buried in enough salt to mummify it. And that salt, expensive, precious. You might go a whole year without a bite of fresh meat. When you do, it's stringy, chewy, and full of surprises. Bread is a staple. Not white, not fluffy. It's dense, dark, and riddled with husks and stones from the millstones that grind the grain. It will crack your teeth if you're not careful. And if the baker's feeling sneaky, he might stretch the flour with chalk or clay. You eat it anyway. Milk is mostly for children and calves. Cheese is aged hard as wood. Butter is a luxury you taste twice a year, usually stolen from the Lord's leftovers. Water, dangerous. Streams are full of waste rot and memories. So you drink ale. Weak, cloudy, and sour. Children drink it too. Wine exists, but it's for the church or the rich. And even then, it's often cut with water or vinegar. Spices. That's adorable. Spices are gold dust, reserved for the nobility and for covering up the smell of meat that should have been buried 3 days ago. Pepper is worth its weight in silver. Cinnamon might as well be a hallucination. But let's talk social entertainment. Once the tools are down, the fields dark, and the fire rekindled, you crave more than food. You crave distraction, laughter, light. Even if it smells like sheep. The tavern is the heart of it all. If your village has one, that's where the stories live. The air is thick with smoke, sweat, and old beer. The floor is sticky. The benches are uneven. The barkeep is half deaf and always scowling. You buy your ale if you have coin. If not, you listen. There's always someone singing, badly. A fiddler scraping out a tune. Dice games. Arm wrestling. A debate about pigs that turns into a brawl. Laughter, screams, maybe both. The ale is weak but warm. It loosens tongues and dulls pain. You drink. You lean in. You share gossip, who's sick, who's expecting, who's been seen behind the grain barn with someone not their spouse. Everyone pretends to be shocked. No one really is. Festivals offer brief escape from the grind. Holy days, market days, harvest celebrations. You put on your cleanest tunic, still filthy, and join the crowd. There's music dancing in circles, jugglers' puppet plays, roasting meat you can't afford. It smells like heaven and scorched onions. You may see a bear tied to a post, a dancing monkey, a man pretending to be a saint for coins. Children throw stones at a man in a sack pretending to be a demon. Someone walks on stilts. Another drinks too much and throws up on his shoes. It's the happiest you've seen anyone in months. If you live near a town, there's theater. Not Shakespeare, not yet. But mystery plays, morality tales, traveling troupes that perform in the town square, devils with horns and pitchforks, angels with cardboard wings. Everyone cheers. Everyone laughs when the devil gets dunked in the river. At home, entertainment is simpler. You sing. You tell stories. You carve little animals from wood. You embroider. You gamble with knuckle bones or play games with sticks and stones. Sometimes, if someone in the village owns a book, you gather around as they read aloud. You don't understand Latin, but the rhythm is comforting. You pass time with superstition. Fortune-telling dreams interpreted the stars watched with reverence. A mole on your neck might mean you're lucky or cursed. You wait to see which. You court. Carefully, under watchful eyes. You sneak glances, maybe a word by the well, maybe a dance if the festival allows. Courtship isn't romantic. It's strategic. But you still feel the thrill. And always the day ends by firelight. Dim, smoky orange. You sit with others. You eat from the same bowl. You share silence. You let your body rest while your mind dreams of warmer bread, fuller stew, stronger ale. It doesn't come, but you keep hoping. That's what entertainment is here. A little hope, a little noise, a little break from the stink and struggle. It's not much, but it's something. It starts with a cough. Not yours, someone else's. Wet, sharp, chest deep. You hear it in the distance across the village green, echoing off the walls like a warning bell. You pretend not to notice, but everyone hears it. Everyone counts the days. Illness is a fact of life here. Actually, it is life. Sickness doesn't visit occasionally. It lives with you, sleeps next to you, eats your food, watches from the corner waiting for the right moment to strike. There's no real concept of healthcare, just survival and the occasional prayer that the boil on your neck doesn't mean something terminal. Start with the common culprits, fevers, fluxes, chills, coughs. Nobody knows their real names. People call them what they feel like, the red sweat, the black phlegm, the gut demon. Sometimes it's food poisoning. Sometimes it's a divine punishment. Sometimes it's just Tuesday. You get sick easily. No vitamins, no antibiotics, no knowledge of germs. Your immune system is a medieval soldier armed with a butter knife and an onion. The water is dirty. The food is worse. Your cuts don't heal, they fester. That scrape you got while hauling wood. It's swollen now, hot to the touch. You hope it drains. You hope it doesn't spread. And then there's plague, bubonic, pneumonic, septicemic. The one with the black lumps under your armpits and the smell of rotting meat before you die. No one knows where it comes from, rats. Air sin doesn't matter. It comes, it kills, and it leaves behind silence. When plague hits, the town empties. The doors stay shut. People paint crosses on the walls and stuff their pockets with dried flowers and vinegar-soaked rags. You pray. You cry. You run if you can. Most can't. If someone dies, they're wrapped in a sheet, tossed into a pit, and covered quickly. The priest mutters a few words, but everyone's already stepping back, holding their breath. But not every illness is plague. Some are slower, crueler. Consumption eats you from the inside. Rickets bends your bones. Pox scars your skin. And then there's childbirth, which is basically just Russian roulette with a baby as the prize. Women die often, in labor, after labor, from infection, from bleeding, from bad humors, from nothing anyone can explain. Babies die even more frequently. Half don't make it to their first birthday, and the rest are lucky to survive childhood. You don't know what causes illness. The church says sin. The doctor says imbalance. The apothecary says it's the wrong phase of the moon. You accept all three. Medical help is limited. There's no hospital, just a woman with herbs, a man with leeches, and the hope that someone's seen this kind of swelling before. Physicians, when you can afford them, come dressed like nightmares. Robes, gloves, and long-beaked masks stuffed with herbs to ward off the miasma. They bleed you. They purify you. They poke you with hot irons. They write Latin prescriptions no one can read. And then they leave. Barber surgeons do the real work, pulling teeth, lancing boils, amputating limbs. No anesthesia. No antiseptic. Just leather to bite and someone to hold you down. If you're lucky, there's an herbalist in town. Someone who knows which roots numb pain, which teas bring sleep, and which mushrooms make you forget your name. Henbane, mandrake, belladonna. The medieval medicine cabinet is 1 part science, 9 parts gamble. You might get better. Or not. And always death waits. It's not abstract here. It's not distant. It's daily. You see it in the sunken eyes of your neighbor. You smell it in the street. You pass the churchyard and wonder who's next. Maybe it's the coughing boy. Maybe it's the old man with the limp. Maybe it's you. Wills aren't written. There's no estate. Just whispered instructions and a hope someone will remember them. You bury the dead quickly, without embalming, wrapped in cloth dirt, tossed by hand, or with a borrowed spade. Sometimes the grave is shallow. Sometimes the ground is frozen. Sometimes the corpse isn't quite done moving when it goes in. You believe in ghosts, in spirits, in demons that linger around the sick. You hang herbs above your door and sleep with iron under your pillow. You mumble prayers to ward off nightmares. You salt thresholds and fear the night more than the day. Death isn't the end. It's a transition to judgment, to purgatory, to a place you can't see but think about constantly. You pay the priest to say prayers for your soul. You light candles. You try to die with a cross in your hand, not a shovel. You hope someone will remember your name long enough to keep you out of hell. You live each day with the fear that your breath might be your last. And then you eat dinner and tell jokes and try to ignore the swelling in your leg. Because life goes on until it doesn't. Your family is your fortress and your prison. From the moment you're born, you're a part of a survival unit, not a nuclear family. There's no concept of privacy. No me time, just shared everything, food, space, labor, and fate. You live together, you sleep together, and if fortune doesn't favor you, you die together. If you're a woman, your life is planned for you before you've even taken your first breath. Your future is not written in books, it's sewn into your apron. You're expected to marry young bear children quickly and never ever complain. Obedience is your duty. Suffering is your virtue. Marriage isn't romantic. It's economic. Your parents arrange it. Love is irrelevant. Compatibility is secondary to dowries, land, and livestock. You might be 14. You might be pregnant before your 15th winter. You're considered a woman once you menstruate. After that, you belong to someone else. You give birth at home. No doctor. Maybe a midwife if she's available. More often, just the women of the village, your mother, your aunt, someone who's done it before and lived. You lie on straw. You scream into a bundle of cloth. There's no pain relief, no antiseptic, and the only tool is a knife that's also used in the kitchen. If you're lucky, you survive. If you're very lucky, the baby does too. You may bury more children than you raise. Disease, cold, famine, infection. These are your daily companions. You learn not to name your babies too soon. You learn to love quietly because grief shouts louder. But your work doesn't stop, ever. You rise before the sun to stoke the fire, bake bread, feed the animals, fetch water, wash clothing, and then if you have time, you care for yourself. You don't get days off. You don't get thanks. You get responsibility and sometimes blame. If the bread fails to rise, if the milk curdles, if the child coughs, you must have done something wrong. Maybe you angered a saint. Maybe you didn't say your prayers. Maybe you're being punished for some hidden sin you don't remember committing. You're expected to be pious, silent, humble. You spin thread, sew, weave, clean, nurse, pray. You carry your husband's name, your children's weight, and your community's expectations on your back. And then you cook dinner. Men rule, but women run. Now look at the children. Not all survive. Many don't. The first few years are brutal. Diarrhea, pneumonia, starvation, accidents. Life is fragile, especially when your toys are farm tools and your crib is a pile of straw. But if you live, you grow up fast. You're useful as soon as you can walk. You fetch water. You watch goats. You scare crows from the fields. School, that's a fantasy. Reading is for the clergy. For everyone else, knowledge is passed down orally through rhymes, curses, and stern reminders about not sticking your hand in the fire. Boys are raised to work. Girls are raised to work and to bleed quietly once a month without interrupting the chores. You learn early that tears waste water. You don't whine. You adapt. Play exists, but it's woven into labor. A child might balance a bucket on their head or chase chickens for fun. You carve dolls from wood-kick stones down a path, sing songs with rhymes about death. Your favorite game might be don't get stepped on by the oxen. If your parents die, which is likely, you don't get foster care. You get absorbed into another family or the church, where you become a servant or a novitiate. Or worse, you become a beggar. Family is not a safe space. It's a lifeboat, and sometimes it leaks. Elders are rare. If someone makes it past 50, they're respected like saints. Wrinkled, bowed, toothless, but filled with stories and reminders of just how bad things used to be. Their wisdom is less about philosophy and more about how to get the most out of a rotting onion. Everyone in the family shares resources. One cloak passed down for years. One spoon, one bucket, one blanket. When something breaks, it stays broken until someone figures out how to live without it, which usually happens quickly. And yet, through all of this, families endure. Not because life is easy, but because there's no alternative. You hold hands when you're scared. You sing lullabies to children who may not live the week. You carve toys. You sew gifts. You find small moments of joy in laughter and superstition. Sometimes a birth is celebrated with dancing. Sometimes a good harvest means a full pot and a round of ale. Sometimes the baby doesn't die, and that's enough to feel like a miracle. You might not know love the way it's written in novels, but you know sacrifice. You know protection. You know the quiet strength of people who endure horror without turning bitter. And that is family life in the Middle Ages. Dirty, brutal, fleeting, but still full of the flickering light of humanity. It's well past midday now. The sun is low, casting a heavy orange haze over the village. But you don't stop. Not because you're not tired, you are deeply, but because stopping means falling behind. And falling behind is dangerous. The afternoon is a time of continuation. Whatever work the morning didn't finish now drags into the second half of the day, hungrier and more spiteful than before. Maybe you're still in the fields, hands raw from reaping. Maybe you're mending a fence that collapsed under the weight of your neighbor's drunken goat. Maybe you're waiting in line to pay a tax you can't afford to a man who doesn't care. Because in the Middle Ages, social conflict is everywhere, and the most common one class. Your entire life is shaped by birth, not merit. If you're a peasant, that's it. You can't climb. You can't aspire. You live in the dirt and die in the dirt. And anyone who tells you otherwise is either a priest or a liar. The Lord owns your land. You work it. He takes your crops. If you miss a quota, expect a fine. If you complain, expect a punishment. If you refuse, expect to vanish. Maybe into the stocks. Maybe into the woods. Maybe into a shallow grave. Justice doesn't favor the poor. It doesn't even see them. Disputes between neighbors over land, livestock accusations of theft, are settled by whoever has more influence, louder relatives, or better bribes. If you're summoned to the manor court, prepare to bow, not argue. If you're lucky, you might get a sentence of penance, some prayer, or a public apology. If you're not, you're flogged, publicly. They tie you to a post in the center of the village and use a whip or a rod. You cry out, or try not to. People watch. Some wince. Others enjoy it more than they should. Crimes range from petty to impossible. Steal a chicken theft. Pick herbs on the wrong land, trespassing. Fail to kneel during mass blasphemy. Your guilt is not determined by evidence, it's assumed unless proven otherwise. And even then, the stocks are a favorite punishment. A wooden frame holds your ankles or wrists while people throw things. Rotten fruit, dirt, insults, sometimes rocks. You sit there in the town square, baking in the sun or soaking in the rain, hoping someone takes pity and ends it early. They usually don't. But not all punishments are official. Some are delivered with whispers and side eyes, social shunning, rumors, accusations of witchcraft. It starts with a weird rash or a bad harvest. Someone looks for blame. Someone else says your name. And suddenly, you're alone. If you're a woman, it's worse. Did your bread fail to rise, witch? Did the cow die after you touched it? Which? Did someone's baby cry when you entered the room? Which? The accusations are easy. The evidence unnecessary. There's a trial maybe. A dunking. They tie you to a chair and lower you into a pond. If you float, you're guilty. If you drown, you're innocent, but too late. Then there's conflict between villages. Feuds over boundaries, over stolen tools, over one too many sheep crossing the stream. These can erupt into full brawls, dozens of muddy, furious people throwing punches, shouting curses, occasionally throwing a thatched roof if they're feeling theatrical. If things escalate far enough, the Lord's soldiers arrive. Not to help, to restore order. That means beatings, confiscation, sometimes worse. The law isn't there to protect you. It's there to protect the structure you live under. Taxes always. On everything. On your land, your grain, your animals, your chimney, your door, your soul. You pay in coin if you have it. More often in kind, sacks of barley eggs labor. If you can't pay, you're fined or forced to do extra work for the manor. You can't say no. Tensions rise within families too. Hunger does that. Jealousy. Inheritance. One son gets more land. One daughter is promised to a man she hates. Fights erupt over nothing or everything. Disputes might be settled by the local priest. He mediates with scripture and guilt, or by the village elder who remembers when people respected elders, or with a knife. Quiet in the dark behind someone's barn. You don't trust everyone. You can't. There's too little to go around, and survival has a way of turning neighbors into rivals. And yet, even through all this, you go on. Because you must. Because there's no alternative. The afternoon fades into twilight. The arguments simmer. The punishments conclude. The gossip resumes. Someone was caught stealing. Someone else might be pregnant. The village pulses with quiet resentment and loud necessity. You return to your work. You finish what must be finished. The sun slips below the horizon, and you pray silently that tomorrow no one says your name. The sun has vanished behind the trees. The orange glow is gone. What remains is cold, creeping darkness and an unspoken tension that tightens around the village like a noose. You feel it in your chest. You always do. Night is not peaceful here. It's not gentle. It doesn't whisper lullabies or offer quiet time to reflect. It presses against your windowless walls and reminds you over and over that the dark belongs to things. You close your door if you have one. Bar it with a wooden plank. Hang herbs near the threshold. Whisper a prayer. Not for rest, but for protection. Because nighttime is when fear blooms. Start with fire. The hearth is your only light source. A sputtering pile of half-burnt logs and coals barely illuminating your one-room shelter. If it goes out, you're in the dark. Fully, utterly blind. There are no street lamps, no candles unless you're wealthy. Just shadows, flickering shapes, and a sense that something is always just beyond your vision. Watching. Waiting. You fear fire because it's your light and your greatest danger. One spark from your hearth, one falling ember, and the whole house could vanish. Thatched roofs burn fast. so do straw beds. So does your skin. When someone's house burns down, there's no fire brigade. Just screams, buckets, and everyone hoping the flames don't jump to their roof next. Outside, the air is still, but too quiet. Nocturnal creatures stir in the woods. Wolves howl. Dogs bark. And every snapping twig makes your hair stand on end. Was it an animal, a thief, a spirit? You lie awake listening, always listening. Thieves come at night. Bandits, vagabonds, soldiers who've deserted and don't care if you beg. They creep through farms looking for anything. Grain tools, daughters. If your house is isolated, you might not make it till morning. Sometimes they don't steal. They just hurt. Because they can. You sleep with a knife tucked under your straw mat. Just in case. It's rusty. Probably wouldn't kill anything. But it makes you feel like you have a chance. Superstition runs wild in the dark. Ghosts walk at night. Witches gather. Demons scratch at windows. You were taught this from birth. You believe it with the core of your being. You know someone who saw a shadow move against a wall and swore it was a dead relative. You know someone else who woke up with scratches on their chest and claimed the devil had visited. Sleep paralysis isn't science yet. It's a curse. The local priest says to sleep with a cross under your pillow, to sprinkle holy water on the doorframe, to keep your soul clean or the night creatures might slip inside while you're dreaming. You do these things. You don't question them. Because fear doesn't ask for evidence, it asks for rituals. And then there are the night screams. Someone somewhere wails, high, cracked, distant. It echoes through the village like a blade. No one talks about it the next day. You all heard it. You all hoped it wasn't someone you knew, or something you couldn't explain. The air gets colder. The rushes under your feet are damp with mold. You lie down on your straw bedding. Scratchy, sour smelling. Lice crawl through the seams. You try not to scratch. You fail. You're shoulder to shoulder with others. Family. Sometimes strangers. It's warm, but it's not comforting. Everyone breathes too loud. Someone snores. Someone coughs. Someone is always awake, too scared to close their eyes. Dreams aren't safe either. Nightmares are considered omens. You wake up in a sweat, certain that the dream of drowning means someone in your house will die soon. You share it with the old woman next door. She nods grimly. Best say a prayer for the chickens, she says. You believe her. Even inside, the walls feel thinner at night. Not physically, spiritually. Like the barrier between this world and the next has loosened. You imagine things slipping through old souls, cursed winds, whispers from people you buried last year. You don't want to sleep, but you have to. Because morning is coming, and so is more work, more hunger, more aching. You must rest, even if death waits just outside. And sometimes it comes in. You've seen it before. A child goes to sleep coughing, doesn't wake up. A man stumbles in from the fields, feverish muttering. By midnight, he's gone cold. A woman bleeds through the night. The midwife stays until the body cools. There's no ceremony, just silence. Maybe a quick prayer. Sometimes you lie there wondering, if I die tonight, will they notice, Will? They wait until morning. Will they bury me properly? Will I come back? You fall asleep anyway. Eventually. Not from peace, from exhaustion, from surrender. And if you're lucky, you wake up, if you're lucky. So now you're lying there on a bed of straw in a room that smells like smoke and wet wool. Your belly is half full, your limbs ache from work, and you're sharing your sleep space with lice family and possibly a rat or two. The fire has gone out. The world is still. The dark is heavy. You've lived a full medieval day, and somehow, you're still here. You've endured the choking morning air, the laborious grind of survival, and the long crawl through superstition, sickness, and filth. You've waded through chamber pots, dry bread, unpaid taxes, and bloodletting sessions that involved more leeches than logic. You've seen family life twisted into a desperate collective struggle. You've watched the sun go down on a village that fears the dark more than death itself. But the real horror, the real discomfort, it's not the dirt, not the hunger, not even the unbathed bodies crammed shoulder to shoulder each night. It's the constant, inescapable pressure of existence in a world that gives you nothing easily. Every breath is earned. Every meal is a negotiation with fate. Every sunrise is a test. And every sunset feels like a small surrender. And yet people lived, loved, laughed. They didn't know anything else. This was life. Not cruel, not even unfair by their standards. Just life. Which makes it all the more important that you're here now. Clean, warm, fed, alone perhaps, but peacefully so. With walls that keep out the wind. With medicine that works. With a mattress that doesn't itch. And blankets that don't smell like goat. You can close your eyes without praying that your soul won't be stolen in the night. You can drink water from a tap and trust it won't give you the bloody flux. You can eat bread that doesn't come with surprise pebbles and meat that hasn't sat out for 3 days beneath a buzzing cloud of hope. You can be alone in your room without worrying that someone will accuse you of sorcery for talking to yourself. You can read this in peace with artificial light, a roof that won't leak, and the reassuring hum of modernity somewhere behind the walls. So tonight, as your eyelids grow heavy, let yourself sink into that awareness. Let the past stay where it belongs, in the straw-filled corners of history, where the mud clings to your ankles and the church bell tolls endlessly. Let the lice, the leeches, and the fear of unwashed spirits remain tucked in their own century. And take a moment to feel grateful, not in a corny way, just in a real one. Grateful for plumbing, for privacy, for toothpaste, for knowledge, for warmth, for peace. So tonight, as you drift off, remember you don't have to wake up in the Middle Ages. Sleep well.